he's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, if we're not playing, John, can we come and watch you play at Newport? And he was like, of course. He was like, sure, whatever. And Roger Waters, to his word, had one night off in like St. Louis and flew with Holly and Jess from St. Louis all the way to Little Newport, got off, I'm getting emotional, walked through the audience. No one, he got on a boat, came on a boat, got off the boat, walked right through the downtown, right through the heart of the audience, because they were all looking at the stage, walked backstage, walked into the dressing room where Danny Clinch was, and they rehearsed Hello in There, which was the song that Roger had covered the year before. And you were in there, and you have a picture, which I have, of them going through it, which not more than 35 to 40 minutes later, he walked on stage as a surprise. Roger Waters walked on stage with John Prine and sang Hello in There. And the minute it was over, he came back, had a couple of glasses of wine in celebration, and reversed it and was back on the plane going back to his own show in St. Louis. He flew halfway across the country to do one song with John Prine at Newport. And you were the only person in that trailer.
Yeah, with the girls. And I also wanted to point out that he did snag Bo from My Morning Jacket for play keyboards on the tour as well.
And Jonathan Wilson, which he had also met at Newport too. So Roger just came to Newport and created a new band.
Yeah. I also remember that there's always a group photo at the end there's always a group photo at the end of Newport where all the artists get together, and the photographers, me included, like get up on climb up on one of these railings so we can get a shot down on everybody. And I think I may have sat in with Prez Hall or something like that, played some harmonic with them. So I felt like I was part of the musicians and all that. So I said, this time I'm getting in this damn photo. And I get in the photo, and I have it hanging up in my gallery in the back room. But it's you and Roger and John, and I'm like right next to Jim James and John Prine.
My shirt.
I think it was Brian Lima that took the photo, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Lima or Colleen or Nina. I have this shirt. I wear these shirts that are embroidered. They're all handmade by this incredible woman named Kathy at Fort Lonesome in Austin, Texas. She handcrafts these shirts of mine, and I'll never forget, Roger was having a good time. He was literally there for 90 minutes. He literally was in Newport for 90 minutes, like total. And I remember he had foregone, I think at one point, having a wine glass. Wine needed, it comes in a glass. So he had the bottle, and he was having a good time, and he was talking vividly with his hand. And one big thing, my entire shirt just got covered in white. It was luckily white wine. And I was like, Roger Waters just spilled wine all over it. But when you take the picture, it looks like I'm sweating profusely. And it's not me sweating. It's just Roger Waters spilling his entire bottle of wine on me right as that picture that you're talking about is taken. But that is so Newport in a nutshell. Like, because, and speaking of one other, just because one of my favorite pictures you have I have like 3 distinct Danny pictures from Newport that I have. And I have the very good fortune of collecting as many of them as I wanted, but the ones that are like things that I would go grab should the world catch on fire. There's another one that you took, and there's variations of it, but there's one of you there's one of Trey Anastasio Fish with Jim James, but there's one that also includes Kermit the Frog. And I'll let everyone digest that Kermit the Frog and Danny and Trey and Jim James. It's like a bad joke.
Go ahead.
We're hanging out backstage in Newport.
So Danny Clinch, Jim James, Trey Anastasio, and Kermit the Frog go into a bar.
That's right. At Newport. And by the way, no one's thinking, of course they do. Part of that story which was genius, is how that happened. Is Jim, as you can say, has played a main part in a lot of what Danny and I have done, but it's hysterical because what actually had happened was, long story, but the Muppets, we were celebrating Pete Seeger, and I always want to give where credit is due, and I'm pretty sure it was Chris Funk of the Decemberists. We were trying to create a set list that we thought it was really important to have Pete Seeger represented in the political turmoil and everything. And he's the founder of the festival, if you don't know, so I don't want to be presumptuous. So he was kind of the founder, and we were thinking of songs, and I had written a set list of songs, and Chris Funk had written a set list of songs, and some of the other peeps that work on the team, like Caps and Beck and everything, we'd come up with these songs that we thought represented that Pete didn't write, but that felt the spirit of Pete. And one of them was Rainbow Connection. And it turned out that Kermit the Frog, the reason Kermit plays a banjo and not a harmonica or a guitar was Jim Henson had been a fan of Pete Seeger, and it was his homage to Pete Seeger that Kermit the Frog played a banjo. So I was saying we have to include Rainbow Connection, and we were going through who would sing it, like who would do it, and like because we'd had all these other songs, like who would sing this? Well, Mavis has got to sing that, or who's going to sing this song? I was like, Randy Giddens has to sing that, but we're like, okay, we'll get Robin Pecknold to sing, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, but who is going to sing Rainbow Connection? And I think Funk was like, dude, just ask Kermit to do it. Like, why not ask, Kermit? And so imagine me calling the Walt Disney Company cold, because that's what happened. I mean, like, hello, what's the number for Walt Disney in California? It was basically something along those lines. Jump ahead. They're like, okay, if you're going to do it, here's the script you absolutely have to use. And they sent the script, and I'm reading the script, and it says, hey, halfway through the song, the script they had was obviously a template of some time they had one that was approved that had been used in some other thing. And in it, halfway through singing Rainbow Connection, Kermit says, and please welcome my friend. And it says, fill in name of artist here. And since this was the script that they sent me, I was like, maybe that will just kind of sneak in somebody. And so this is how this worked. I called Jim James. It's about 2 weeks before the festival. And Jim basically answers the phone. Hey, man, whatever it is, I told you, I just can't come to Newport this year. I need to take a year. I got this, me and this girl, we're going to take this vacation. He literally just, before I said a word, just like, I know that if it's 2 weeks before Newport, the only reason you're calling me is some amazing, cool thing is going to happen. But I am telling you, absolutely not coming. Full beat. It's like, totally, that's fine. So here's the deal. I'll call somebody else. It's Kermit the Frog doing Rainbow Connection. Just dead stop. And he's like, can I call you back in like 10 minutes? And I was like, yeah. 5 minutes later, it's like, if I can bring my girl, like, yeah, we're going to come. So Jim, in the 2 weeks, gets a custom rainbow denim suit made and flies. Remember, just so the audience knows, Jim James is not playing the festival. Like, he's not on it. So the last day of the festival, Kermit the Frog, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Newport Frog Festival, Kermit the Frog. He does his thing. Kermit's like up there, the place. I still get chills thinking of Kermit singing in front of 10,000 people, singing Rainbow Connection, everybody's singing it together. And lo and behold, he goes, and after halfway through the show, he's like, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend, Jim James. And Jim comes out in this rainbow suit and he crushes it. Yes, this, right? Thank you.
My portrait of Jim and Kermit backstage.
It's so damn good. It's so damn good. And the best part about that is Jim James flew across the country to sing 45 seconds with Kermit the Frog. And that was the only thing he did. Like, that was it. That was his appearance at Newport. And again, when I went back rushing with my phone to try to capture something, all I saw was Danny. I have this great image of Danny's very sexy ass, because all I see is Danny kind of hunched over his camera all the time.
Once again,
always behind him, just always grabbing the shot that I'm just about to grab with my shitty cell phone and go like, and I was like, thank God, like Danny, as representative of the entire Newport photo team, is like, they get those moments that I just spent a long time talking about, because if a picture's worth 1,000, or in my case, 2,000 words, it's so hard to understand when Danny or somebody says, it's things you will only see at Newport. I'm just trying to give a very tip of the iceberg things of what we're talking about, because those are the moments where, like, I just can't explain it. Like, I've been around, and I know I'm not objective because I'm very much involved with Newport, but it's this weird thing of like, all the artifice is gone, and the dry ice and the smoke and the laser beams, it's all gone. And it's just people who play music that love music, and people that listen to music that love music, and nobody's making any money, and there's no real sponsorships, and it's all very, and it's where the kind of the past and the present. I mean, Danny has this incredible photo of the moment that Mavis Staples, there's a picture of Mavis Staples, and correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, the three people are Brandy Carlisle, Phoebe Bridgers, and Maggie Rogers.
Yeah.
And two of those people were meeting Mavis for the very first time.
That's right. You can see it in their
And-
faces.
And you know how you can tell they're meeting it for the first time? Because you can see it in their faces. They are just agog, that being Phoebe and Maggie. And Phoebe and Maggie weren't playing the festival. They had come as friends with the Mumford and Sons guys. So again, my point is like,
Right. And I think Mavis just said, come up and sing on something with me.
Yeah, just like, you're going to come sing. They met her, and 10 minutes later, they were singing on stage with her in front of thousands of people. And
yeah, I posted that photo, and Maggie's father tracked me down, and he was like, I have to have this photo for Maggie. It's like, okay.
yeah, and that's why I think when Tom said, who do you want? I said, look, I could obviously talk about Newport ad nauseum, but it's more important to realize that here's something that a lot of people don't realize. We don't have a poster. We don't simulcast it. You have to kind of be there and be present. And I think what happens out of that is people like Danny, and the rest of the crew, a lot of people only experience Newport through the photos because we don't do video. Like this is it. So you see a picture of Jim James with Kermit the Frog, and it's from Danny. It says live at Newport, and people are like, I'm sorry, what? And then they're trying to find a review, or they look for it.
Film, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's a beauty to that, of letting these images, these iconic, they become iconic very quickly.
Yeah.
Because I think people are living their idea of what happened at Newport through stills. And I don't think that happens at a lot of other places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody said must be present to collect. I agree. I think it's one of those things where, and that's why I specifically asked you, Danny, to do this, because as somebody who has been with me, you've taken photos from in front of the stage, but you've also seen how hard it makes it seems magical all the time, but there's a lot of sweat and tears that go into it in the backs.
Yeah. The romantic outlook on it from the outside is so cool. And then what you have to deal with behind the scenes and pulling all that stuff together and coordinating everyone is definitely not romantic.
And I also know that, in case nobody knows, that Danny also has his own festival, See Here Now, which is one of the nicest compliments I've ever received, period, was from Danny. I know his friend and partner, Tim Sweetwood, very well. And I don't know, I'm making my own history, but somebody was like, we should probably tell Jay we're doing a festival, just because we're both friends with him. And Danny was like, from what Tim said, was Danny was like, I'm going to call Jay. And you're like, hey, man, I want to let you know, for me, I'm doing this thing. And I read someplace you had already been quoted saying like, yeah, I've learned a lot going to Newport. And if I could bring a little of Newport, but put it through my own lens of my own hometown. Yeah. And that meant a lot to me, because, one of the things that we aren't, we're not trying to corner the market on music and magic. The more, I just think the more of it that happens, the better. And if more people come to Newport and glean anything and are able to take that out into the world and create their own moments of hope through music, that's a win for everybody. Sure. And you were one of the first people that kind of came out and said full on, like, Jason Isbell actually on his thing down at, in Memphis, at Muscle Shoals Fest, I get the Google alert. I've spent so many years at Newport that I figured I knew how to run at least something where I wanted it to seem as much like Newport as possible. Yeah, I mean, I think that's because our
our background is as like music fans first, right? So we are still backstage, we're standing on the stage and you're like looking over at Joni Mitchell and we're just like, holy shit, like this is
Oh yeah.
incredible. And then when we start to put together See Here Now, Tim Sweetwood, of course, and Tim Donnelly, my buddy who I grew up with on the Jersey Shore, who also started as a music journalist and is just extremely knowledgeable of the great musicians that have come through in the history in our area and what plays well there. And HM, who's our other partner. We all just try to come at it from a fan's perspective and try to put ourselves in the place of the artists of the fans who we are and that who we connect with. And you've done that such a great job doing that it certainly has helped me, in the way that we present ourselves to the world with See Here Now.
But I also know that, and I appreciate that. And the thing that's interesting though, is that much like, and I actually did get to touch a John Landau, who I know, since you shoot Springsteen more than anybody, is John said something, because, the famous thing of John was a writer and he saw Springsteen, right? And he's like, this is the future. This is it. This is the thing is, for someone like the magnificent George Wein, who founded everything, to give the reins over after someone like Pete Seeger, to give the reins to a person who is only kind of on his resume that he could do it was he had written about music. And what I mean by that is because I was such a music fan, he's like, you'll figure all the other shit out. But if you can come at it from being a fan of music, especially someone who would write 2,000 words on one moment of one song at a concert and be so moved by it that you could write 2,000 words and make it interesting. Yeah. I always, those first years in Newport, before I knew what I was doing, the only criteria point was, would this be interesting if I was reviewing it? Meaning would make it easy to tell a story about it, because that's how I went to every music festival, was just looking at it like, is there a narrative here? What is everyone trying to say? Not only the artist, but the person presenting these things in the place, etc. But, Danny, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do want to know, because you and I have discussed this, and I think it might be time to let some of the people know, is I call it white whales. I don't know, I forget what you call it, but I have certain people, the white whales, of who I am still desperate to grace the stages of Newport. Yeah. Crossed I crossed 3 of them off last year in the National, and Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell. I was able to take 3 of those people off the white whale list in one particular, and the Roots. So actually 4. Is there anybody, and I don't want to even hear about who you'd want on See Here Now. You have so many years to decide who you want to put on that thing, but to shoot, to capture, to have a photo session with. Are there any people that you feel or have been,
Well, I always say that I was trying for Prince, and I had a sort of a connection there. It was starting to formulate, and of course that never happened, which was too bad. But I've also, I have a couple of great photos of Dolly Parton, but I also, got some from Newport, but I just really haven't had a moment with Dolly, which I think I would really love to have. She's just such a legend, and I thought I had it going on, and then I got like put in a trick bag.
Do you remember the funniest thing is you and I both thought we had it going on with Dolly. Yeah. And if anybody doesn't know the story, Dolly was another surprise visit to Newport. And if we'd gotten Dolly Parton and Kermit, that would have really nailed it. But the interesting with Dolly is Dolly had she had her, let's just say she had her own photographer that shot very specific. And it's hysterical because I actually did finally end up posting it after years of not, because it is rightfully so the dorkiest picture of me ever, because it's like, holy shit, I'm next to Dolly Parton. But at the same time, it wasn't that cool. It wasn't the Danny or Colleen or Brian Lima or Josh Wool or Goldman or Kissick. It wasn't like the Newport team. Yeah. It wasn't captured. It was staged. Yeah. Because it was like, you stand here, hold on. And then they took 5 pictures and they let Dolly choose which one. They deleted the other ones. And then I was literally a week later sent it in the mail and like, here's your photo. And I totally get it. But it was one of those only things where, because if you remember, and if I know you remember, but the people might find interesting is no one believes this unless you were there. Backstage is kind of bustling and it's got that Newport energy going. And this car pulls up and the door opens and this very small thing, we no one knew what it was, steps out, a black shroud. When I say a black shroud, I'm not talking about like a Italian funeral widow shroud. I'm talking like a black curtain hung over this thing with these 2 tiny little red cowboy boots, and nobody talked and nobody moved. Everything, it was like the record scratch, nobody moved. And she was walked into, if you remember, the trailer just had the symbol for a female on it. And that was it. Because we didn't want anybody to know, including anybody backstage or anything. She literally was wearing a black shroud. And she walked in. And so when we say taking pictures of Dolly was a absolute no, I don't know if you remember that. I mean, I just remember the silence of everybody just, and then as soon as the door went in, the kind of volume went back up and people started being like, well, that was kind of weird.
Yeah, their guy said, yeah, you can get in there when they're running through a song. And I'm like, oh, that's what I live for. Go in there. She's with Brandy. She's with a bunch of other artists. They're going over a song.
Jason, Maren Morris, Jason Isbell.
I don't want to hear it.
Natalie Merchant.
And so I'm in there and I think I'm going to get in there. And they all come rolling out with big smiles on their faces. And the guy says, oh, we got the photo. Don't worry about it. And I was like, no, we didn't get the photo.
And by the way, we still have not seen the photo.
We still haven't seen it.
Yeah. We. So there
I
is a photo that exists someplace. Anyway. But again, it happened. And if you remember that silence before the one and only Miss Brandy Carlisle, Dolly Parton. I mean, she knew how to work that beat.
Sure.
And the silence from the beat to the thing was that first time where being on the stage, that feeling of just a wave of sound. Like people say they know what that is, but it is a physical, it hit like a crashing wave into my body.
It was incredible.
It was such an incredible moment of that. And we've been so fortunate to have those moments of hope. And I've really thought a lot about this, and I knew that we were going to talk, and I kind of wanted to bring this one part up, like in looking at the last 15 or 16 years, however long I've been just doing Newport, it really comes down to moments. The rest of it's amazing and it blends, but when I say moments, I realize what I'm talking about. It's not even a song. It's like that moment when all the 35 women, you were on stage right next to me, when there's 35 women singing 9 to 5. And Dolly, they're vamping and everyone's singing 9 to 5. And Dolly's like, I'm out. Like, I'm in the car, police escort, I'm out. Looking at Molly Tuttle, Courtney Marie Andrews, Maggie Rogers' face, all looking at each other and being like, what did we just sing with Dolly? Like watching that, it's those moments. And I realized that a lot of my ability to remember those exact moments come from a still photograph. Like it's an amalgamate of me being present and then looking at what you've shot and marrying those two is what creates the thing in my brain. Am I making any sense? Because it's not just my memory of it. It's my memory of it in looking at, hoping that one of the team members has captured it in a way that will jive with my memory of it. And then that's a kind of self thing. And I just wonder if you think about that it's the power of literally a moment will be able to allow me to go tell a 10-minute story, like a frame. I mean, do you think about that sometimes? Do you feel sometimes
when you see my photos?
Yeah, I'm saying is like, do you know sometimes?
I never think about it.
Let me ask you this. When you sometimes when you hit it, you'll take two. I've seen you. You're not sitting there going, grrr, you're like click. And I know sometimes I've seen you just go click and be like, I got it.
Yeah.
And it's not a overconfident way, but like that's the one.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get in the zone and you got to anticipate. And I've been in this situation so many times, and sometimes you miss it, even though you've been in the situation a million times, but it also helps you get there a lot quicker. So, I mean, I'm always, I could appear to be casual observer, but I'm not casual at all. I'm like really paying attention to every move, and I can see behind myself and to the left and the right and straight all at the same time sometimes.
I know, I've seen it. And the thing that I like is that it's so rarely posed.
Yeah.
I like it being captured in the wild, if you know what I mean. Like to me, that's where the romance is. It's like the pictures I have of me having my own moments, and one of you guys is so kind to take. There's a story, and we got to give credit, and I'm patting my heart. Our mutual friend David Crosby left the earth not too long ago, and I think that might have been one of your first helicopter rides. I don't remember, but there's a thing we call the Newport helicopter, which is a boat, and sometimes at the end of the thing, we get some artist off site on a boat, and every once in a while, Danny or myself will hitch a ride on the boat because there's some room on the boat. And there's this picture you took, and I'll never forget it. It was David Crosby after this kind of very triumphant return to Newport, where he literally sang the song Wooden Ships and Ohio with Jason Isbell. And it was a very powerful moment. It's powerful in you hearing it, but if you were there, it was pretty powerful moment. And it was, when I say powerful, I mean, it was big. It was like, Ohio and Wooden Ship. It was a big moment.
It was huge.
For you to capture the most quiet, he's then right after that happens, after the emotion, he and his beautiful wife, Jan, were on a small boat. I remember that kind of dusk, and we're going, and he was just sitting back having a beer.
Yeah.
And just, he was, me and Jan, we're talking. Yeah. He was just kind of watching him kind of emanate as a Buddha. And then I kind of remember him leaning forward, and he was like, it's those moments. Yeah. He was kind of being like, it was those moments where I wish the world had more of them. And you and I were just like, what's happening? And you sent me a picture that just said Wooden Ships on the water. and it was just of course I have all the memories of the cacophony of powerful protest, but I always balance it with this picture you took of him in the most serene. Yeah. I don't think he'd been that calm and serene in a long time. So
content. He looked so content. I want to tell my version of the story, because we were all backstage and everybody was emptying out. And I usually, I'm the last to leave most all the time anyway, as Jay is as well. And I was about to figure out how am I going to get back, to the mainland. And Jay swings by and he said, you heading back? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. And he said, you want to ride with me? And I said, well, yeah, my buddy's out in the crowd. And he goes, well, go get him. And I said, okay. So he says, meet me back over here by the dock. And so I go down there and I grab my buddy and I said, oh, we're going to get a ride back with Jay. And he was like, oh, cool. So we go, and, the boat's empty. Nobody's on it except for the little crew there. It's a beautiful wooden boat, by the way, as well. And so we were kind of stoked. And all of a sudden, here comes Jay with David Crosby and his wife. And my friend Chris, who I stay with when I'm in Newport, I just looked at him. I was like, oh, I guess we have company. Okay. So they roll through. They're just as kind as can be. We get on the boat. Margaret's there. We, get a beer in our hand. We start cruising. And of course, as Jay said, all these great moments happen. The light is just incredible for me. I have this Leica right here, which is just always with me all the time. Very unobtrusive. I snap a couple of photos of Jan and David, as well as David. And then I remember David starts telling us these stories, and he's like regaling us with rock and roll stories. And he's like, I remember this time we were on my sailboat.
Maya. his sailboat,
Yeah.
the Maya.
With like Jerry Garcia and
Yep.
all these chicks and Jackson Brown, and
Yeah.
he's going on, he's telling us this like crazy story. I was like, wow, that is crazy. So I get back and I'm actually at my friend's place who does Love Rocks, which benefits God's Love We Deliver, my friend Greg Williamson, and Jackson was there. And so I saw Jackson, and I photographed him a bunch and stuff. And I was like, wow, I was with Jay Sweet and we were with David Crosby. And he was telling us this crazy story about you and Jerry Garcia and a bunch of chicks and a bunch of, shenanigans going on. And Jackson's like, what?
Never happened.
That never happened. I wouldn't remember being on a sailboat with Jerry Garcia.
That was my favorite part of the story.
Crosby.
And Jackson told me that too. He's like, hey, by the way, never on that. Never happened. And I was like, doesn't matter, Jackson. I don't give a shit.
That's right. We're telling the story. Yeah.
Who's telling the story here, pal?
Yeah. Right.
But
who remembers what?
But I do remember that so well. And Jan and David wrote me a letter, like a handwritten letter after that, saying, we really needed that. We really needed, David needed that. And it was, again, the video of that night was incredible, but seeing him peaceful after was just as powerful to me. I don't know. I don't know, Tom, if there are any questions anybody has. We have 10 minutes left, I think. And I don't want to, if someone's dying to know anything, I could tell stories all day, obviously, but I don't know if there's anybody. Danny, do you see one? I don't even know how to read the chat.
I do see someone asked about Rhiannon and Paul Simon singing American Tune.
Which they changed the lyric.
But I remember being at the rehearsals, and she came in, and Paul went immediately over and said hello, and just like really focused in on her. There was a lot of people around, Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, and they had just done an incredible rehearsal, which I was able to be at and photograph. And the two of them went over into a corner, and we all just kind of stepped back, and they went over that song over and over and over and over. And he was very particular in the sweetest way to her about how he wanted it to fall. And when seemed very comfortable with him, and it was magical. So
the best part is, if everybody noticed, I didn't tell that story because that's what I mean about Danny getting to be like, I have to relive so much of my experience through your photographs. I do. And I'm not, this is why I really thought this would be important, because there are some where I have the ability to go be in those places, but I have to be comfortable knowing that I can't be everywhere. And I had to walk out of that Joni Mitchell rehearsal because there was a chance when she was rehearsing that it still might not happen on the stage. And I almost threw up thinking about if this doesn't make it from this rehearsal to the stage, I can't see any more of it. That's how intense it was.
Yeah.
I mean, people were just generally just like literally bawling while she was rehearsing. And I was like, she still wasn't going to make a decision until the day of the show. And I had to leave on the third song of that Joni Mitchell rehearsal because I was like, if I see this and the world doesn't, I don't know how I'll be able to I don't know how I'd be able to convey to somebody what almost happened. You know what I mean? Like, that's the hardest thing is you watch those rehearsals and you're like, God, man, just get onto the stage, And my relief when an artist finally gets on the stage is when I breathe a little bit, because I'm like, no matter what happens, the audience is going to get to share a little bit of the experience that you and I have seen backstage. Like Roger Waters rehearsing Hello in There, like Jim James, like all these things, I have the ability to see it. But if I'm the only one experiencing it, the tree falls and no one around to hear it, did it really happen? Right. And those moments that have almost, I can tell, I will not, because they're saving for another time, all those moments that almost happened at Newport, but just for whatever reason didn't. And I know you said I almost got to Prince, and then it didn't happen. Yeah. So, but that moment you told me when I saw you before everyone walked on the stage, and Rateliff did an incredible job putting that whole thing together. He deserves so much credit. Him and Chris Tetzelli, and that whole team doesn't get enough credit for putting together one of the best sets of music that had ever graced the stage. But I remember distinctly you telling me, and then it was followed up immediately by Robert Ellis being like, wait until Rhiannon comes on this stage. And the other brilliant was, I think I remember in my head being like, yeah, and look at, that'll be right at the sunset. Newport has this weird golden hour where the sun is setting and it just there's a yellow, I can't explain it, you're the photographer. It just has this gold thing, and it was,
and if you're on
right then is
stage
when
right, if you're on stage right, behind like everybody, and you get like a really sweet
that shot. And she was there, and she was in that light when she sang that song. She was literally in that light.
I've got that shot. I've got that shot of her and Paul. It's the sun.
I remember the light. I
lighted.
remember the light more than the moment. I remember the way that golden was. And that's where I was like, you know what? You were like, wait till, and I got to see that happen without any, it wasn't filtered through the rehearsal. It was just, it was in that moment. And that's what I mean, man. Like that's what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's another short one that anybody else is desperate for. 5 minutes.
There's a bunch. I'll just chime in with one, and that is, Jay, let's talk about Joni for a moment. How did that come together? How did you pull that rabbit out of that hat?
Brandi Carlile first, and I didn't pull it out. I wish I've had a instrumental hand, I'm not gonna lie, in a lot of moments. The only thing I added to that was crossing my toes, my eyes, and my fingers. I literally just prayed to all the musical gods. It was, well, let's all be clear, it was Joni Mitchell who decided to play Newport. There was no, Brandi could only do so much, but Joni Mitchell had to decide to do that. And I can't get too deep into it because a lot of it's very personal, but it really wasn't until around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or something like that when we felt like it was going to happen on the day of the actual event. So I want people to understand that, like, it wasn't just this foregone thing of happening. Like, the rehearsals had actually started on Thursday. And again, I was in there, and the Anthony Mason, who's a friend of Danny and I, this CBS, amazing music lover, he and I were both in the rehearsal, and I had to leave. It became too emotional. Like, everybody who was in the rehearsal was like, it was just truly too much. It was too much emotion. And I was just saying, like, I remember saying, if this actually makes it on the stage, I thought it was going to be a pretty big deal. I had just no idea. And the thing that's the most important, I mean, Joni Mitchell learned how to walk 3 times in her life. Not a lot of people can say that. You know, once when she actually learned to walk, and once after polio, and once after her medical condition and incident that happened. But one of the things that I really want people to take away from that when I talk about moments of hope, and Danny can attest because we all felt it, there was nobody there. Dude, Questlove sat there backstage and was like, I can't believe he knew only like 30 minutes before it happened. He's like, I can't believe I realized I just opened up for Joni Mitchell, because the Roots were right before it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can tell my kids, man, I opened up for Joni Mitchell. Trying to get through this very quickly and emotionally. The thing that's crucial to understand is that moment trended, and I'm not hip to trending and all that. When Dolly Parton came, it trended for a whole day in America. It was in the top 5 things trending in America. The thing I was most proud about that Dolly Parton moment, that also Brandi Carlile, of course, had an instrumental hand in pulling off, was it was positive. There was so much bad in the world when that Dolly Parton moment happened. It was in America, and it trended for a day, and it was positive. Joni Mitchell trended worldwide for 4 days, and it was worldwide, and it was the only thing in the top 10 things trending in the world: famine, Ukraine, war, pandemic. And it was the only thing, the only moment of hope in the things trending in 4 days in the world. And something like the LA Times said something like, you know, Joni Mitchell coming back to Newport gives us a reason to believe in God. And so when you are witness to that moment, whether behind a camera or having a safe space where that can happen, you just, music fan or not, you just don't take that things for granted. But again, to end on a perfect note, it takes the artist. It all comes from the artists. Danny and I are just along for the ride, man. It's the muse hitting the artist, and the artist taking a chance to go beyond their comfort zone to deliver those moments of hope. And I just love having a front row seat.
That's quite a mic drop. Now, how are you going to top that this year, brother?
You don't. That's the answer. It's like, you know what? You do the exact opposite. You maybe take a little pressure valve off of what Newport, and you let some of the young kids look. There's a massive. There's not a massive. We have these legends, and Danny is the king of shooting these legendary people. But Danny, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but my guess is there's some people coming up, but we need to give this younger generation a chance to become those legends. Like, somebody needs to say, like, we were very fortunate to give someone like Jason Isbell and the Avett Brothers and My Morning Jacket, these headlining, and Brandy Carlisle and Allison Russell, these headlining spots before other people were giving them headlining spots. Like, these legends need time to breathe. And I think the best thing that you have to remember, Joni Mitchell was coming back to Newport. This wasn't Joni Mitchell finally coming to Newport. This was Joni Mitchell coming back to Newport, where she was discovered. She showed up in 1967 uninvited just to hang out because Judy Collins was like, you should come check this thing out in Newport. It's cool. And she had her first performance in 69 and met fellow first timers, James Taylor, this other guy, Van Morrison, and I always kind of look at that, like, to remember that Joni Mitchell was Maggie Rogers or Phoebe Bridgers, or like, she had that moment. So I think the best thing to do it, she met Leonard Cohen in 1969 at Newport. So the best thing that we could do at Newport is to provide the kind of next generation a chance to, by the way, you don't top Joni Mitchell, first of all. You just can't. Unless I could get the Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad to all come and do a jam session together, it's about providing moments for other people to step into those roles.
Yeah, you should. Colleen Hennessy and her SOPA Productions did some really great little films for you over the years. I suggest people go check that out.
If you want to know what Newport is, Colleen, who's just this incredible, she has the unenviable task of boiling down each Newport into like these 3 or 4 minutes. If you watch all the thank you videos starting in like 2017, I really love the 2018 and 2019 is very special. If you look at the 2019 thank you video and whatnot, some of the moments that we're doing, and she had, like I said, she has a very hard task, is to try to boil down a Newport in just a couple of minutes. I can't watch those because I cry. I just start crying.
Well, she gets it, and she understands the document, and she doesn't get in the way of the document. Some people will get in the way of it by trying to force their sort of, their opinions and force it. She just lets it happen and make sure that she's there to catch a beautiful.
Hey, that's Greg. Say hi,
Greg Williamson in the house.
By the way, we're all going to his place, Love Rocks. If you haven't, that's my boy. That's Greg. He has this thing called Love Rocks. It's happening next Thursday. Is that right? Is it a week from today?
Thursday, March 9th, Beacon Theater. We'll see you there.
I'm going to be there. So that was easy. That was the easiest plug ever, Greg. Thank you.
That was perfect. Hey, you know what? I'm going to show you something really quick just to, this is his space where he does these Soho sessions. I've been to the Love Rocks thing a bunch of times, and I do a little portrait spot there, like I did at Bonnaroo, like the one that we talked about, Jay.
Yeah.
And these are some of the portraits that I've done over the years.
I can't wait to get mine done.
I know, what the hell? There's no more Polaroid though. There's Lucas. That one's pretty cool.
Nice.
Love it. What else? Oh, this is one of my favorites right here. Keith and Gary Clark Jr. like about to hit the stage.
That's amazing. Well, Tom, how did we do? Tom, did we do okay?
You think? There's quite a loud clamor to keep this going for a couple more hours, if not a few more days. Seriously, gentlemen.
I got a festival to go run.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of the audience, hands down, this may be my favorite of all. I've done 173 of these. absolute mic drop today. I may not do another one because I don't think I can top this one. You guys
Thank you.
are everything.
Nobody's smarter than Jay and I.
Yeah, by the
By the
way,
way,
that was the hardest thing for me to send out to people. Be like, I'm doing this thing, the smartest people in the room, and of course, everybody asked, how many people are in this freaking room? 3. 'Cause
3 of us.
you being the smartest does.
That's
that group
right.
cannot
It's a
be
very-
large.
Very small room.
That's a
Well,
very small room.
I will say
But
this.
thank you all for anybody who took the time to listen to us babble.
Yeah.
We know I again feel very honored. I'm a music fan and I am beyond fortunate to do this. And one of the only reasons I do get to do this is because I know there are other music fans out here who are spending an hour with the two of us. And just know we are you. And like I said, please keep supporting live music. It is not a foregone conclusion that we will be able to tell stories like this 5 years from now. It is not a foregone. It is not a given. Do not take live music for granted. Please do not take live music for granted.
Amen to that.
Mhm.
I will say this, today's episode is called The Most Passionate People in the Room. Because Jay, your passion for your work came
Yeah.
shining through, and Danny, I mean, Jesus, what a body
Can't
of work.
argue that.
So thank you so much. To the audience, you got
Thank you,
yourself
guys.
a treat today. Be nice to everyone. We'll talk to you later.
Be present, be open, be kind, be together. Peace.